As a Prime Minister, current or former, you are a custodian of the state. And its failures, whether on your watch or not, are something that you feel deeply. And to that end, I want to extend my deepest apologies to the families and victims of the Grenfell Tower tragedy. The state let you down, and it must never do so again.
I call the Leader of the Opposition, Rishi Sunak.
Mr. Speaker, can I start by thanking the Prime Minister for advance sight of his statement, especially given the timing of Prime Minister's question time. And can I also associate myself and everyone on this side of the House with the Prime Minister's powerful words regarding the pain of the bereaved families, survivors, and all those affected by the tragic events surrounding Grenfell Tower. Many are with us today in the gallery, and I want to pay tribute to their strength and patience in waiting for this moment. It is not hyperbole to say that we would not be here today without them. It was their tenacity and strength that brought the truth to light, and for that they deserve our thanks. Their search for truth and justice is a noble one and has our full support. And whilst the Grenfell community's loss will have left a hole nothing will ever be able to fill, I hope that whatever healing is possible from today, that each and every one of them takes some small measure of it. I know they will never forget the 72 people who tragically lost their lives, and nor shall we. Today's publication, as the Prime Minister said, is, to put it bluntly, a damning indictment of over 30 years of successive state failures, stretching as far back as Knowsley Heights in 1991 and then multiple incidents from there. Sir Martin Morbick and the work of the inquiry have painted a picture of systemic indifference, failure, and in some notable cases, dishonesty and greed. Sir Martin and the team working on the inquiry are to be commended for the depth and rigour of their work. And Mr. Speaker, while such a comprehensive report as has been published today deserves to be considered in full, and I welcome the Prime Minister's commitments for time in this House to do that, there are some immediate points that I feel will command support across the House and that I'll address to the Prime Minister. First, the work to remediate and, where possible, identify new at-risk buildings must continue if we are to meet, as I'm confident the whole House would agree, the Right Honourable former member for Maidenhead's pledge that no such tragedy could occur again. I know this task is not a simple one, and I thank the Prime Minister for recognising the importance of this issue. A significant barrier to making progress quicker is financial liability. It was an issue I was all too aware of when I became Chancellor, and why one of the first major spending decisions I made was the creation of a new £1 billion fund to pay for remediation works in public and private buildings affected by materials beyond dangerous ACM cladding. And the previous government's cladding safety scheme has ensured an additional £5.1 billion is available to support remediation work, coming from a combination of a developer contribution and a building safety levy. So I'd ask the Prime Minister and Chancellor to give due consideration to any further requests, especially with the upcoming fiscal event towards the end of October. The second point I'm confident that the Prime Minister would agree on is the need to maintain and update our legal and regulatory framework to keep pace with changes in materials, construction and supply. The last Parliament passed the Fire Safety Act in 2021, but also the Building Safety Act in 2022. And I acknowledge, as the Prime Minister said, that he worked constructively with the then government to deliver those improvements. These pieces of legislation comprehensively reformed our fire safety and building regulation regimes and ensured that a new building safety regulator was created, located in the Health and Safety Executive. But I also know that these are stepping stones towards a fire and building safety regime that remains persistently fit for purpose. And in particular, I'd urge the Prime Minister to give special attention to the recommendations in today's report, especially its call for more regular updating of approved Document B, a single regulator, a sole Secretary of State responsible to end the fragmentation of Whitehall responsibilities, and a new Chief Construction Advisor. And I want the Prime Minister to know that should he deem further legislation to support proportionate and necessary measures to protect the public, whilst protecting leaseholders from excessive costs is required, then we will work collegiately with him to deliver that. Thirdly, Mr. Speaker, allied to the need for continued improvement in the legal and regulatory frameworks, this report also shines a light on the significant failures of oversight. those responsible for ensuring the independence and rigour of testing and compliance, were found by this report to have had those very things compromised. In particular, the BRE, in its work with suppliers, in part enabled what Sir Martin Morbick's report has plainly described as systemically dishonest behaviour on the part of suppliers. So I welcome the Prime Minister's commitment to continue to support the Metropolitan Police and Crown Prosecution Service in pursuing any appropriate criminal charges against a small number of developers and contractors who knowingly and fraudulently cut corners on building safety for greed and financial gain. And Mr. Speaker, I don't want to let this moment pass without also acknowledging the local failures today's report highlights, whether from the tenant management organisation responsible for the building itself, who allowed relationships with those living in Grenfell Tower to become so broken that tenants were marginalised and at worst ignored, the repeated fire safety reports that were not acted on, the lack of effective management and leadership at London Fire Brigade, and the local council, who had a lack of adequate oversight into the management and maintenance of the building and the cares and concerns of those living in it. Mr. Speaker, there will be further lessons to learn from this inquiry. There will be difficult questions for all those responsible acting over a long period of time. And I know that the Prime Minister will agree that we must approach those questions with the honesty and directness with which they deserve. And let me conclude, Mr. Speaker. At the time, the former Right Honourable Member for Maidenhead apologised to the victims for what she described as failures at a local and national level in response to the fire. I share in those same words still. I think today, however, demands more. As a Prime Minister, current or former, you are a custodian of the state. And its failures, whether on your watch or not, are something that you feel deeply. And to that end, I want to extend my deepest apologies to the families and victims of the Grenfell Tower tragedy. The state let you down, and it must never do so again. Mr. Speaker, the mission to ensure no such tragedy can ever happen again is one I know the whole House supports. But more than that, it is part of a legacy we must create and maintain so that our actions meet the full meaning of our words.